Well, hello. I'm Janet Morano, the Executive Director of Priests for Life. Welcome to our program. Well, today is going to be a very exciting topic because did you realize that October, besides being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, is also Down Syndrome Awareness Month? Now, you might say to me, gee, Janet, why do we need a month to be aware about Down syndrome? Well, there's a problem that people are not realizing how wonderful and valuable the lives of each and every human being is, including Down syndrome children. In our country, at one time back in the 60s, life expectancy for Down syndrome children was only till about age 10. But medicine has helped so much with these children now that Down syndrome children grow into being wonderful, productive adults. And some of them live well into their 50s and beyond, is the life expectancy currently. But unfortunately, Down syndrome children are targeted in utero for abortion. And do you realize that some countries, I'm going to give you some shocking statistics. In Iceland, they brag that they have 100% eliminated, 100%, zero, no Down syndrome of children are born in Iceland, and they brag about it. Why? They terminate every one of those pregnancies in utero, 100%. And then there's Denmark. Denmark brags that they are 98% Down syndrome children free. So 98% of the children conceived with Down syndrome are aborted. 98% in Denmark. Oh, and Great Britain, 95%. So you must say, is this a problem in America? Well, sadly, it is. And it depends on which study you look at, but anywhere from 67 to 85% of Down syndrome children are aborted here in the United States of America. They're targeted. Well, joining me today is a good friend of mine. Her name is Eric Thielman and her son Andrew. And we're going to chat about her pregnancy and what the doctors tend to pressure a lot of women with Down syndrome children. And we're going to meet Andrew and we're going to hear all about how wonderful Andrew is. So, Erin, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having us.
Well, and hello to Andrew, who is now 4 years old. And I have known Andrew
Yeah.
since I think I first met Andrew. He was about 15 months old, wasn't he? Something like that.
Yeah.
He was a little cutie from the time I met him, and he's still cute. So, Erin, let's take it back to your pregnancy with Andrew. At what point in your pregnancy did you find out that you were carrying a child with Down syndrome? And what was the medical advice that was going on at the time?
We did the prenatal screening because I was a little older, and that blood test revealed that there was a higher possibility of Andrew having Down syndrome. So I was pretty early on. I think probably maybe just after 12 weeks or so. But at that time, when we received, and it wasn't confirmed, it was just suspected. And at that time, when we received the news, I was referred to a maternal fetal medicine doctor who was specialized in high risk pregnancies. And unfortunately, during that time, she reminded me quite frequently about the Virginia state law to terminate pregnancies. And, as we just saw Dobbs and Roe v. Wade handed down to the state level, that conversation still plays so heavily in my mind because she referred to the very specific state laws that I had only so many weeks to terminate this pregnancy.
Wow. So she was basically putting in your head that you don't have to have this baby, and here's you only have X amount of more weeks to make that decision, so we can terminate the pregnancy, and then you won't have to deal with this. I mean, that's isn't that sad that that's the
Yeah,
attitude, right, of the medical profession?
it's extremely heartbreaking, and I my response to her was, I'm very pro life. I don't quit on anything. I'm not quitting on this pregnancy, and I sort of put her in her place with that. But the hard thing about that too is that sometimes my older children would have to go with me to these appointments. That's when they learned what abortion was, when they were 5 and 8.
Wow.
they learned at that time what abortion was because the doctor that we are supposed to trust wanted to murder their baby brother.
Wow. And okay, so 5 and 8. I guess the 8-year-old, that would have been your daughter, right?
The
At
8-year-old, sorry, he likes to
right.
pull my hair. The
That's okay.
8-year-old would have been my son, my older
Oh,
son.
okay.
My daughter was 5 years old.
Oh, she was 5. Okay. So what did they say to you? I mean, the kids, when they heard the doctor say abortion, and they were getting the idea they want to kill our baby brother that's in mommy's belly.
They were horrified. They're like, why would anybody want to do that? Why would they want to take this innocent life? And they got very indignant and very upset. And at that young age, they knew how wrong it was. And I think that if you were to present that to any 5 and 8-year-old, even if they are from a pro-life family or not, they would probably have the exact same reaction, that is just not right. You don't kill the babies.
So did you stay with that doctor then as a specialist, or at a certain point did she like stop selling the abortion and switch over to, okay, we're going to help you have this pregnancy now?
I stayed with the practice, but I switched to a different doctor. After about the 4th time of her telling me, that we needed to abort Andrew, I sort of had it and just switched to a different doctor within the same practice.
Oh, okay. And that doctor didn't sell abortion to you then, and
No.
He could just deal with your pregnancy. I mean, you went to a maternal fetal specialist because you wanted this baby to have every chance possible to do as much for this child as possible in utero before it was born. And so now you finally got a doctor who's going to be a team player and help you, right?
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so the rest of the pregnancy was pretty okay, normal compared to your others. And at a certain point, did they tell you for certain that Andrew would definitely be Down syndrome?
Not until he was born was it 100% for certain. It was just suspected. But what's concerning about that is how many of these pregnancies are suspected to have Down syndrome, and they're terminated only. And they don't know for sure if there was something wrong. Not that termination is ever an excuse for anything, but there's so much misconception put out by the doctors that you're supposed to trust.
Yes. Well, and I wrote about a testimony like that in my book, Everything You Need to Know About Abortion for Teens. And the family is Kurt and Laura Shumay. I know them quite well. And they were told that their son Christopher would be born with Down syndrome during the pregnancy. And of course, they're pro-life. They would never consider terminating the pregnancy. And guess what? Christopher was born 100% normal. He did not have Down syndrome. So you're correct. It is sometimes not for certain that baby's going to have Down syndrome until the baby's born. And like the statistic I just said, here in the United States, depends on what survey you look at, anywhere from 67 to 85% of these children are aborted because of the pressure like you got from the medical profession, that they want to terminate these pregnancies. So, okay, so now Andrew is born. You know for certain you have a Down syndrome child. You and your husband, what support services did you seek? Tell us about that story when he was first born.
When Andrew was first born, I had a C-section. It was an emergency C-section. And he was born a couple weeks early. And my first question, as soon as he came out, was, does he have Down syndrome? And the nurse said, very matter-of-factly, he has the features that are common with Down syndrome, but we will run the blood test to be sure. Okay. So sure enough, it came out. But the next thing I said when I saw this little face was, oh my goodness, he looks just like his big brother. He looked just like his big brother. And at that moment, everything just, we didn't worry. We didn't have a worry in the world. I mean, we would go through 35 days in the NICU. We'd go through an emergency surgery on Andrew. We'd go through the scariest moment in our lives when he was transferred from one hospital to a higher level NICU in a little baby ambulance.
Uh-huh.
But we knew he'd be okay. We knew God had put him here for a reason. And right now he is fulfilling one of his purposes. But the support services that we had, Fairfax County in Virginia has really good early intervention programs. So we got connected with them through our pediatrician right away. And now he's going to a public preschool where they specialize in special education. And we're looking at the possibility of kindergarten next year.
Wow, that's wonderful.
And we've been blessed to be in our neighborhood too, because we actually have about 5 other children with Down syndrome within a 3-mile radius.
Wow.
So we try to make it a point to get the kids together at least once a month.
Right. That is terrific. That is really terrific. And like I said, I first met Andrew, I think he was about 15 months.
I think
And boy, oh boy, I can just imagine he's super active now, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Mm-hmm. So tell us all the things Andrew can do, because I think so often people think of Down syndrome children almost like disabled, or they can't do what other kids do. And, so tell us about Andrew, like, how's he doing?
Andrew walked at the regular milestone as any other child would. Andrew smiled and laughs, and he communicates, and he demands attention just like any 4-year-old would do. I like to say that normal is a setting on the washing machine. It's not who we are. We're all a little different. And right. He has his little differences, but he's on track just like everybody else. His speech is a little bit delayed. He's still figuring out how to run, but he can climb stairs and climb on the kitchen table and climb just about everything.
He looks like he's climbing all over you right now.
He is. It's his favorite thing to do is to climb.
Uh-huh.
So we can't take our eyes off of him for a second.
Right. And I bet you too, he probably likes to do things other 4-year-olds like to do, like scribble with crayons, or give him Play-Doh, and he's going to be squishing up Play-Doh and things like that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And his favorite thing to do is to sit and read books. He will sit and be interested in a book for hours on end.
Well, matter of fact, I saw you posted a picture yesterday on Facebook or last night that he fell asleep in his crib with a Cookie Monster book by his head, right?
He did. Yes, this is very typical for him. It's his favorite toy, our books. He likes to pull them out and turn the pages, and he'll bring it up to us and say, "Read, please."
Right. Yeah. So, are there support groups that you've joined with other moms who, like you said, you have a few in your neighborhood, but are there actually support groups for moms?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So there is tons of support groups. The Global Down Syndrome Foundation has local chapters that are, I think, in all 50 states easily, and more than one in each state. So we are active with the Down Syndrome Association of Northern Virginia. Andrew is now old enough to participate in Special Olympics young athletes. So when we don't have competing schedules with the older 2 children, he goes to that. So there's all kinds of different support groups, but the biggest support groups are really those parents that are that have children with Down syndrome, but are maybe a little bit older. One of our very first meetings after Andrew was born and out of the hospital was with Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers and her husband. And I remember that conversation, and they said something very important. They said, "Welcome to the Cool Club." And sure enough, this is 100% the Cool Club.
That is wonderful, because like I said, I've been fortunate enough to have exposure to families with children with Down syndrome over the years. And in fact, when Priest for Life was up in New York, we were very close to one family, and they used to bring her name was Mary Jane Camilleri, and she would bring her sister Donna to visit us periodically. And when she would come, Donna would love to volunteer at Priest for Life, and she would be stuffing thank yous and doing all kinds of work. And so I always, had a lot of exposure to Down syndrome children. Because of my work in the pro-life movement, families would contact us and be in touch with us. And I have to say, these kids live very productive lives and grow into adults, and they actually hold jobs. I was in Publix the other day, and there was a Down syndrome adult, and he was assisting the cashier packing groceries. I mean, they are all over among us. And I think it's a pity still that the medical profession pressures women in their pregnancy to want to abort these children when they're such a blessing. And talk about a little bit of Andrew's interaction with his two older siblings.
Oh my
Because
goodness,
everyone tells me they really are a blessing in the family. So
they
tell
are.
us about
Our family felt more complete once Andrew was born. Not that it wasn't incomplete before, but it just felt even more enriched and more complete when he came along. My kids have to get up very early for school, and they're out the door by 7:30 in the morning for school. But when Andrew comes down, one of us will carry him downstairs, set him down, and he comes walking into the kitchen, and the big kids will stop eating or doing whatever they're doing, and just like take turns just loving on him. And when they come home from school, I'll carry Andrew through the door, and he will jump out of my arms and into his big brother or big sister's arms. The three of them are really connected and very, very, very tight knit. They learn
it.
from each other. They learn joy and patience and empathy.
Yeah. And do they take part in maybe playing games with Andrew, help teach him
Oh
things, read
yes,
to him? Because I can imagine the older siblings would want to kind of show him, like, oh, here's how you hold a crayon, or here's how you do this. And do they interact with that to help teach Andrew certain things?
they do. Yeah, he he gotta get his wiggles out. Um, they do. So they interact with him by reading books or playing some of his favorite games.
Right.
They do teach how to paint, how to scribble, how to. My daughter is teaching herself sign language so that she can communicate better with Andrew. So she's teaching him sign language.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
It is, yeah.
Tell her stick with that sign language because maybe she'll go on to study that when she gets older because they are just so desperate for people to know sign language. You can become a translator. You're at a conference and they have someone signing and speaking. So tell her that's a good profession to go into.
Well,
Absolutely. They don't have enough people doing sign language. In fact, when I was teaching public school in New York, I felt very blessed because in the classroom across from me was a special ed classroom, and they were all uh, deaf or hearing impaired children, and the teacher did sign language. And I remember one Christmas we performed for the holiday show because you weren't allowed to in public school to say Christmas. The holiday show, we performed a song and they joined us and my class learned how to sign the whole song,
oh
and so
wow,
it was quite beautiful. I think everybody was crying in the school,
I bet.
in the audience,
I bet.
because here these little first graders were with these deaf kids and everyone signed and sang the song. So it was quite moving. And so I think that's marvelous that your daughter is taking that initiative to learn sign language because it really is needed out there and it's so important. So
Yeah, we're very proud of her.
so what advice would you give to someone who might be watching or listening and they just came back from their obstetrician appointment and were told it looks like you're carrying a Down syndrome baby? What would you say to them?
I would tell them that it's going to be okay. Take a deep breath, do your research, find your support groups, talk to other parents, um, find the best pediatrician that you can and choose which hospital you're going to go to make sure they have the right level of NICU for the just in case. But that at the end of the day, when the child is born, the child is going to want to be loved and cherished just like anybody else. The child will wake up to eat in the middle of the night just like any other child. Child will need diaper changes just like any other child.
Right.
There's not a ton of difference except maybe a little more medical appointments. On my
Right.
website, I do have a list of Down syndrome resources, and my website is erinThielman.com. But there is an entire list of Down syndrome, comprehensive list of Down syndrome resources on that site.
Yeah, that's great. And just to describe a little bit, because I think people do get concerned. So when Andrew was born, he did have a few medical issues, right? Because
Yes,
that is a possibility.
absolutely.
What were some of those medical challenges?
He took so in the state of Virginia, they and maybe this is elsewhere, but they had to pass a car seat test where they could sit in a car seat for a certain amount of time and their oxygen level would be the right amount. And he kept doing what's called desatting, so desaturation. So he had to
Mhm.
stay in the hospital longer. And then during that time that he was in that hospital trying to get his saturation up for the car seat test, um, then that's when they noticed his stomach was swelling. So he has what's called Hirschsprung's disease. And that's why they had to rush him from one hospital to a higher level of hospital where he could have surgery to correct it. But thankfully, we had, by the blessing of God, one of the best pediatric surgeons, and Andrew's followed in Denver with the Global Down Syndrome Foundation out there in the C Center for Down Syndrome, but he's also followed by the colorectal clinic out in Denver. And the doctor that sees him out there is a doctor that invented Andrew's surgery. So we
Wow.
have, and I can go out there as often as I want because my family's out there. So it makes it sort of easy for us. But the Global Down Syndrome Foundation and the National Down Syndrome Society are really two very good organizations. Down Syndrome Foundation, Global Down Syndrome Foundation tends to focus more on the treatment. National Down Syndrome Society will focus more on the legislative and the policy. So the Global Down Syndrome Foundation out in Denver played a really big part in getting Andrew the right care that he needed.
Right. And then, I can allude to the fact that your husband also is the chief of staff for Senator Daines.
Yeah.
And has there been any movement in Congress? I know right now we have a very hostile pro-life Congress, but is there something afoot that might want to pass some sort of legislation that can assist Down syndrome babies more, and so they are not targeted for abortion? Is there any talk about any?
There's Yeah, they tried to. Senator Daines and a few other senators tried to pass a law. It's called Protecting Children with Down Syndrome, and to make it almost illegal to abort children based just purely on the prenatal diagnosis of suspected Down syndrome. But unfortunately, that did not fail, or excuse me, did not pass. It failed. But I know that Senator Daines and a few other senators are going to keep pushing to make sure that we
Yeah.
have these protections in place. One of the things that Senator Daines did do is he helped to increase the minimum wage because people with disabilities were actually paid below the minimum wage mark. So he
Really?
made it, yeah. So there was a bill passed that got them paid at the exact same minimum wage as everybody else.
That's marvelous. That's marvelous. Yeah, because like I explained earlier, I did see a gentleman with Down syndrome helping to pack the groceries at Publix. So good, he gets the same pay then
Yeah.
as the other kids. There's other young adults that don't have Down syndrome that also pack your groceries, and actually in Publix they offer to take them to the car for you too. But he should get paid the same as the other kid. And thank God they had. It's a shame that they had to pass a law like that. It
It,
should be common sense.
you're
But thank
exactly right.
God they got the law passed. So, this could be a midterm election item here now to go out and vote for the pro life candidates, because a bill like Senator Daines wants to put forth to make it illegal to abort Down syndrome children could help in our country, couldn't it? I mean, this would be amazing. But unless we have a pro life Senate and a pro life House, like you
Right.
just said, it's not going to get anywhere, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, it's marvelous though that you have a website, erinThielman.com, right?
Right.
erinThielman.com. And brothers and sisters, I mean, you need to go to her site because she's got tons of resources up there. And I think what we're going to do, Erin, I'm going to have you on every year during Down Syndrome Awareness Month so that we can keep up with how Andrew's doing. We could just follow his progress because like I said, these children are blessings and they are successful. In fact, I saw just last weekend on Fox and Friends, they part of Down Syndrome Awareness Month, they had two adults with Down syndrome kids. They were in their 20s and they both had successful businesses that their moms were helping them run out of the home. And the one was called 21 Pineapples. And he had all these beautiful Hawaiian looking shirts with all pineapples on them of different colors and designs. And the other child had or adult had an artsy products that you could buy from them. So I mean, I think it's wonderful. It's marvelous. And there are just so many Down syndrome kids that are out there as adults now leading productive lives. And so thank God for people like you who stay out there in the public to make people aware that Down syndrome children are people too. The one boy actually said that yes, we're the human family and we're part of it and proud to be. So
That's right.
anyway, Well, listen, I want to thank you and the whole Thielman household for being so vocal on this issue, and hopefully there will be some babies saved by this information. So thanks for joining us. And Andrew, bye, Andrew.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for joining us, Andrew, and God bless.
You too.
Okay. Well, brothers and sisters, I hope you found this informative, but please don't let the information stay here. Spread the word. October, was just ending now, but it was Down Syndrome Awareness Month. And why don't you make people aware of the beauty of having a Down syndrome child? Spread the word, and we can stop having people abort these children because of the pressure of the medical community. Remember, there will be some abortions only you will be able to stop, and some lives only you will be able to save. Join us again next time. Thanks and God bless.